Okay, so Samuel Parrish owned a slave named Tituba from his time in Barbados. And Tituba is going to come into play later on in the story. Um, Samuel is also friends with the most important Puritan ministers in the New World at the time, Increase and Cotton Mathers. Now, the stories of witches have been on everybody's mind for quite some time period. In 1688, in Boston, a family by the name of the Goodwins, 4 children began suffering from fits and seizures. They accused a neighbor woman of tormenting them, and after a long trial, the neighbor was convicted of witchcraft and hanged. And due to the writings of Cotton Mather, who's incredibly influential during this time period, and everybody's reading him, this idea of witches pervading the colony began to be spread around. So everybody knows that there could possibly be witches out there. Okay, so in 1691, 92-ish, we have a couple of people we need to talk about. Okay, Tituba, like I already said, she was a slave that came with the Parrishes. And on your left, you see Increase Mather. On the right is Cotton Mather. Okay, let's talk about Sarah Good now. Sarah Good is rude, unpleasant, and she creeped people out. And she was an outsider in the community because she and her family were poor. Her first husband had passed away and left her with a lot of debts. She married another guy, and he thought he could help, but got just crushed under the weights. So eventually the people are homeless. The Good family, there's Sarah, her husband, a 4-year-old daughter, and a little infant. They're reduced to knocking on people's doors and begging for food and sleeping in people's barns for night. The husband's out of work, and so she would go knock on people's doors and ask for food, and if they didn't give her food, she would mutter under her breath as she walked away. And the Puritans at this time period, they're so superstitious that they begin to believe that this muttering under the breath that she was doing, she was cursing people at the time period. And in this time period, if you suspected somebody of witchcraft and accused them of witchcraft, you were accusing them of a capital crime. So they didn't, at the time, didn't take this very lightly to convict people of witchcraft. Eventually, like I said, 4 girls are going to come under the influence of the witchcraft. Betty Parrish, the Samuel Parrish's daughter, her Samuel's niece, Abigail, and 2 other girls, Annie Putnam and Elizabeth Hubbard. And they eventually are going to accuse 3 women of being witches, and they were arrested and tried publicly. One of them is going to be Sarah Good. And then the magistrates go out to arrest these women. And when they go to arrest these women, of course, crowds followed after them. And so by the time they got to the place where the trial was going to happen, this big ordeal is going on. And Sarah Good thought she would throw herself on the mercy of the court. Like I said, she's considered an outsider. She creeps people out. She's cranky as crap. And she is a bitter, pissed off woman. And she was not very religious, which is a big no-no in Puritan Massachusetts at this time period. And so she's considered guilty from the start. She denied she made any deals with the devils. And the 4 girls that were afflicted, they were asked, did they see evil spirits around her? And asked if she was the one who was tormenting them. And the girls answered, yes, she was one of them, but there were others. And then they fell down in a fit in the courtroom and started convulsing. And when the magistrate pushed Sarah Good, she said it wasn't her, but she didn't know who it was. It was Sarah Osborne, and she named another lady in these things. Even Sarah Good's husband accused her of being a witch and an enemy of all that was good. And as far as the court was concerned, that was enough to convict her. She is convicted and sentenced to be hanged. And as her guilty sentence is read, she yelled at the judge, I'm no more of a witch than you are a wizard. And if you take away my life, God will give you blood to drink. And in a weird twist of fate, 25 years later, the judge does die choking on his own blood. Like I said, she is eventually hanged. Next, we have Sarah Osborne. She is looked at suspicious because she had been ill for a year and confined to her bed and hadn't gone to church.